Hello, this is Pastor Aaron, and welcome to Bible 101. Trying out a new microphone, so let me know how it works in this situation, because I realized that the microphone was kind of far away where we had it before, so we'll see. All right, so we are picking up with the story of Genesis, continuing on with that sort of epic saga, and we have gone now to the sons of Jacob / Israel. And you may remember from the last lesson, Jacob had two wives, functionally four, right? He has Leah and Rachel. Leah was the older sister, and she was apparently pretty ugly, and he didn't like her all that much. Rachel was the sister that he loved, the wife that he really loved. Each of them had handmaidens. Leah had Zilpah, and Rachel had Bilhah. So during the time when he was up in Hebron, he had 12 sons altogether, right? So we have Leah had 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, and it's specifically because she's not loved. So God says, okay, I'm going to give you some children, and there's this terrible thing as you look at the meanings of these names that she hopes that he's going to love her because she bears him sons. Well, Rachel, during this time, she doesn't have any sons, any children, so she gives her handmaiden Bilhah to him. And she says, have sex with her, have children with her. And he says, okay. And she has Dan and Naphtali. Well, Leah sees that she's not bearing any more sons and that Rachel has given her handmaiden. So she gives her handmaiden, Zilpah, and Zilpah has Gad and Asher. After this, there's this weird thing with mandrakes. And Leah actually then bears more sons, Issachar and Zebulun, and also a daughter, Dinah. And then finally, Rachel, after all this time, bears Joseph and eventually Benjamin. But Benjamin is actually the death of her. She dies during childbirth, bearing him. Well, we pick up the story and we're really focusing on Joseph, actually. He is the one that we're going to focus on. He's the youngest. He is the best loved of his father's children because he's the son of Rachel, right? And so Jacob just pours praise upon him and all sorts of good stuff. Joseph's job, basically, as the youngest, is to tattle on all of his brothers. So they go off and they are being shepherds and they do something wrong. Well, of course, Joseph is right there to see it. He goes and tells their dad. They get in trouble. So Joseph is not a very popular brother because he's not only the favorite one, and everybody knows it, including him, but also he gets them in trouble. Not only that, but Jacob pours on him more praise, and he gives them this beautiful, wonderful coat. Some translations say that it's a coat of many colors, which implies a lot of different dyes, which of course is a very expensive thing. It may also be, or it may another translation is that it's a coat with long sleeves. Long sleeves, that's a lot of extra fabric that aren't necessarily necessary. So it's a very high praise. As I was telling my 6th graders, everybody else, there's 12 sons. I'm the oldest of 7. I know how this goes, right? Everybody has hand-me-downs. They've got, if it's really, really fancy, they get Walmart stuff or Kmart. They get thrift store clothes. It's just everybody, that's what they do, right? That's what they grow up with. But then Joseph gets this fancy coat. He gets a designer coat. It's a brand new leather, beautiful, gorgeous coat, right? And he wears it everywhere. And every time they see him, they are reminded that he's the favorite and they're not. Well, Joseph knows that he's the favorite, and he's kind of a jerk about it because he has these dreams and he tells his brothers about them, and it's really nothing but to get his brother's goat. Not technically their goats, because their goats are different things. Never mind, bad joke. And he has this dream, and he says, okay, I had this crazy dream. And he tells, he sits them all down, and maybe it's over the breakfast table. And he says, I had this crazy dream last night. We were all binding wheat. And this was, when you would gather wheat during the harvest, you would tie ropes around it so it would be this big bundle that you could take that whole thing and go and thresh it. Well, we were all binding our wheat, and my one was, it was huge, and it was, it was thick, and it was tall, and it stood upright. There's potentially some allusions to some things here. It was big, and it was gorgeous, right? And all of yours, they were all limp and small and tiny little things. And they then all bowed down to my sheaf. And the brothers are like, whatever, shut up. You've never harvested a sheaf of grain in your life, and now you think we're going to bow down to you? You're stupid. Get out of here. They don't like him because of it. Well, the next day, he tells them about another dream, and he tells his mother and father as well, and he says, hey, guess what? I had this crazy dream. I was out in space, and I was floating around, and the sun and the moon and 12 stars, they all bowed down to me. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that a weird and crazy dream? And his father even rebukes him and says, just, okay, I love you. You're my favorite. Everybody knows it. But shut up. You think I'm going to bow down to you and your mother is going to bow down to you? Okay, you're great and all. You're my favorite. But let's get a sense of perspective. Well, Joseph does not endear himself to his brothers by any means. One day, they see him, they're off being shepherds, and they actually switch fields, potentially because they know that their father's going to send Joseph to check up on them, and they don't want him to find them. So they move to another field. Joseph goes to the field that he thinks they're at. There's an old man, and he says, do you know where my brothers have gone? The old man says, yes, I think they've gone to this other field. And he says, okay, thanks. And he goes and he finds them. They see him off in the distance, and they start to grumble. They say, oh, there's that dreamer. There's that punk kid with his designer jacket. There's the one that we really hate. I wish we could do, if we got him alone out in the middle of a field, we could really do something. Hey, wait a second. He is alone all in the middle of a field. We can do something. And so they start to discuss among themselves, and they say, I know, let's kill him. Let's just get rid of him. And we can take his coat and put some blood on it and pretend like he was eaten by an animal, and that'd be great. We just get rid of him. No more Joseph problem. Well, Reuben, the oldest, he says, no. Let's not kill him, because that's not something we're supposed to do. Killing your brother is generally looked down upon. And so he says, let's not do that. Let's do this. We have cisterns here. These are holes that were dug in the ground. During the rainy season, they would fill up with water, so you could have water where there's no spring. But at this point, they're dry. He says, why don't we beat him up? Don't get me wrong. We're going to totally beat the crap out of him. But then let's shove him in this hole, and he's just going to die, right? But we didn't actually do it. We didn't actually kill him. Then we can go back to our father and tell him that he died and do all that sort of stuff. No problem. But we didn't actually do the job. And so the other brothers say, okay, that sounds like a great idea. We'll do that. Well, what he doesn't tell them is Reuben actually has the idea that he's going to circle back around. When all the rest of the brothers go to tell the father, their father Jacob, Israel, that Joseph has died, he's going to go and pull Joseph out of the hole and says, hey, we did all this to you, but don't tell dad or else we'll do worse to you. Come on, and he's going to bring Joseph back to their father. He may not be the best loved one, but he's the oldest, so he's going to be second best if he brings Joseph. So after the rest of them tell Jacob that their son is dead, he's going to bring Joseph and say, hey, look, he's actually not dead. All of these guys beat him up. You guys, I'm the favorite son now, or I'm the second favorite son at least. So that's Reuben's plan, right? This is why he doesn't want to kill Joseph. It's not because he loves Joseph. It's because he's trying to get the best out of the situation. Well, they do that. Joseph comes, they beat him up, they throw him in the hole, and then they have dinner, apparently. They just kind of sit around because they're still watching over the sheep. Well, Reuben apparently goes and takes a walk. I don't know what happens because he's not here for the next bit. When the rest of the brothers all look off into the distance, and there are traders. They are Ishmaelites. They are on their way from the Chaldeans to Egypt. This is the trade route. They go back and forth, and they're bringing camels and livestock, and they're bringing fabric, and they're bringing grain, and they're bringing slaves, and they're bringing all sorts of stuff, right? And they're basically, this is what they do. They go between these two kind of fledgling empires, and they buy goods at one place, sell them at the other, buy more goods, and back and forth. Well, one of the brothers has a brilliant idea why don't we sell Joseph? So not only are we getting rid of him, not only are we not killing him, but we're actually making money on the deal. And the rest of the brothers say, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So they flag down the Ishmaelites, who are actually their cousins, you may remember. These are the descendants of Abraham's other son through Hagar, Ishmael, right? They sell their brother Joseph into slavery with them and count their money and go home, right? Well, they grab the coat off of him, they rip it up, and they put blood on it from a goat, and they bring it to their father eventually. And they say, we found this coat. Tell us, is this we think it looks like Joseph's coat, but you're the one that would decide. You're the one who got it in the first place. Tell us, is this our brother's coat? And when Jacob sees it, he says, oh my goodness, yes, it is. He recognizes it right away. And he says, my son, the son of my favorite wife, my favorite son, he's dead. And he goes into, they think he's going to, of course, be sad about this, but then he'll get over it. But he actually goes through a deep, dark depression. In fact, it'll be years and years before he comes out of it. So imagine that. I think about the rest of these brothers as they're watching their father every day. And he's just in this deep depression and just this funk that he cannot get out of. And they know that they've caused it. And they know that they can't do anything about it, because as far as they know, Joseph is going to die if he's not dead already. He's a slave. That's not an easy life. So they just kind of go on and keep this secret among themselves. Well, Joseph does, in fact, get sold into slavery. He goes down to Egypt. And he is hired actually by a very wealthy man, a man who's high up in the Egyptian government named Potiphar. And every time he's given control over something, or every time he's working, everything goes well, right? If he's put over livestock, those livestock, they multiply and they're healthy. If he's put over the food stores or the cooks, everything is delicious and it stays good and everything's wonderful. If he's put over as manager over other slaves or servants, everybody's getting along and they're doing their work efficiently, all that sort of stuff, right? Potiphar finally realizes that this is the fact, and he puts Joseph in charge of everything, his entire household. Basically, Potiphar doesn't worry about anything in his entire household because Joseph is taking care of it. He basically just cares about what's in front of him as he's eating right now. Everything is under Joseph's control. Basically, Potiphar almost takes a vacation. He just says, I don't have to worry about anything. And so he doesn't. And Potiphar's household thrives and it does really well. And it's all because of Joseph. Joseph apparently has gone through this maturation process. He grows up as a person. He takes his job seriously and God blesses him, whatever he does. And we'll see this all throughout his life. Everything he does is blessed. Well, Potiphar is not the only one who takes notice of Joseph. Joseph is young and handsome and well-built, and Potiphar's wife takes notice of him. She is a lonely housewife, apparently. And so she sees this young, virile man who's blessed with everything, and so she says, aha, I'm going to get him. So she comes to him and says, sleep with me. And he says, no. This is actually a fairly surprising thing almost, because up to this point, all throughout Genesis, there have been propositions like this. And, Sarah says to Abraham, sleep with Hagar, my servant girl, and get her pregnant. And he says, okay, sounds like a good idea. Jacob's wives, Leah and Rachel, both give their handmaidens. Sleep with them. Okay, no problem. Joseph is propositioned and he says, no. Your husband has given me everything in your household. He doesn't care about anything he doesn't worry about it because I'm taking care of it. The only thing he hasn't given into my hands is you, because you're his wife, right? I'm not going to do this evil thing. Well, as Shakespeare says, there's no fear, hell hath no fury than a woman scorned. And she is scorned that day, and she's scorned the next day, and the next day, and the next day, because every day she comes to him and says, sleep with me, and he says, no, I won't. Over and over and over and over. Well, finally, one day she has had enough, and so she gives all of the rest of the household a day off. Apparently, Potiphar's off doing something else. So Joseph comes to work, and there's nobody there. And she, I imagine, jumps out from behind a corner, and she grabs a hold of him, and she says, there's nobody here. Sleep with me right now. And he runs. She's holding onto his coat, and he just takes it off and takes off, right? He's in nothing but his kilt. He runs out the door. And so Potiphar's wife, she's like, seriously? You left me again? You left your coat? He left his coat. Aha. So she runs out the door and she cries after him, grab that Hebrew slave. He's come to make a mockery of us. He tried to sleep with me. He tried to rape me here. And he left his coat when I screamed, so grab him and we're going to arrest him. And so they grab him, and Potiphar gets home and he listens to the stories and he has to side with his wife. And so he sends Joseph to jail. So Joseph is wrongfully imprisoned. He's thrown into this foreign Egyptian prison, and then we have a very similar story that we've seen from Joseph, right? Everything he does goes well. I don't know, he must have had chores or something like that in this prison, because every time he does something, it goes well. In fact, eventually he's put in charge of the entire prison. The jail master says, okay, just take care of everything, and as long as Joseph's taking care of it, everything's fine. There's no more brawls, there's no, all of the prisoners are fed and they're relatively happy and everything's good, right? Well, one day Joseph is walking along doing his rounds. It's the morning, and he goes to, the presidential suite of the jail, and there are these two prisoners that have just been sent down by Pharaoh himself, the king of Egypt. It's his chief, his cupbearer and his baker. Now, the cupbearer, that was a very significant role in ancient courts, because this was the person who not only brought the wine, sure, but he himself tasted the wine. You know, he would taste some of the wine, hang out for half an hour. If he's not dead, great. The wine hasn't been poisoned. He would eat all the food, make sure it's not poisoned before giving it to the king. Because when you're a king, you have to worry about these sorts of things. Foreign country or somebody else, or someone who wants to take over the throne from you might poison the king, and so you have these people who would test everything. And this was a very intimate relationship that he and the Pharaoh would have, because this is the one person of everyone that he had to trust implicitly, because he knew that it was literally life or death. The baker, of course, is someone who bakes, right, for the Pharaoh. Well, Joseph comes to them, and they're both looking really sad and dejected and kind of depressed. And he says, "Hey, what's going on, guys?" And they say, "Well, we had these dreams, and since we're here in jail, there's no magician, there's nobody that can tell us what these dreams mean." And Joseph says, "Well, I'm pretty good with dreams. Why don't you tell me about these dreams?" So the cupbearer says, "Okay, I had this weird dream, and there were these 3 grapevines, and the grapes looked really good, and so I went and I had Pharaoh's cup in my hand, and so I squeezed one of the grapes into it, and it was this wonderful wine, and I gave it to Pharaoh." And Joseph said, "Wow, that's a great dream, actually. And it's really easy to interpret, actually. The 3 vines, they mean that there's going to be 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, you're going to give Pharaoh his cup. You're going to be restored. Your head is going to be lifted up, and you're going to be restored to Pharaoh's court. And when that happens, remember me, because the fact is, I was sold into slavery unlawfully. I was sold by my own brothers. And then, even here, I was wrongfully imprisoned. I don't deserve to be in the jail. So when you are restored to Pharaoh, tell him about me. Maybe he can do something." And the cupbearer says, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the baker says, "Oh yeah, my dream was basically the same thing. There were 3 baskets of bread, and I had them up on my head, and there were these birds that kept coming down, and they were trying to eat the bread, and I shooed them away." And Joseph says, "Kind of the same, but here's the difference. The 3 baskets, they mean 3 days. Same thing. But after 3 days, your head is going to be lifted up off of your body, and you're going to be impaled on a spike, and the birds are going to eat your flesh." So a little bit different. And the Pharaoh's bread maker says, "Hope that you're wrong about these sorts of things." Well, 3 days goes by, and it's Pharaoh's birthday. And as sort of a fun thing, after everybody's probably a little bit drunk, he calls to have his former chief cupbearer and his chief baker brought up out of jail. And Pharaoh has them stand before everybody, and of course they're groveling or whatever. And he has, "Okay, lift them up, yay." And he says to the chief cupbearer, he says, lift up his head. You are restored. Yay, he's restored. Whoa, that's amazing. Oh, how gracious is Pharaoh. And the baker, lift up his head. Cut it off. And they cut off his head, and they stick it on a spike, and the birds eat his flesh. And the chief cupbearer, he is so overwrought, he's so thankful for what has happened, he completely forgets about Joseph. Just utterly and totally forgets about what Joseph did for him. And in fact, we won't pick up the story for 2 years. But that will be next time. Thank you for joining me for Bible 101. Join me next time as we continue the story of Joseph. Also, go to our website, faithpresbyteriansc.com, for more information. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with somebody else, and have a very blessed day. Thanks.